Well, there's that philosophical question that we sometimes wrestle with. Um, and, I don't really care what the answer is. I just want to know how the railroad was involved. And so that's what we're going to look at tonight is how was the railroad involved? There before you is what is a classic poultry car. Do want to give thanks to Christian Dumler and Ray Breyer, a few others. Christian and Ray have both done extensive research on poultry cars, as well as shared with me their files. And so what's contained here this evening is a lot of it is copied from Christian's PowerPoint, but also inserted stuff I had come across and as well as things from Ray and others. So let's just begin here. Poultry cars in the early years. Live poultry was shipped by crating the birds in small wooden crates. Any of you who've ever been on farms with chicken crates, you know what I'm talking about. They'd be loaded in box cars stacked on flat cars.
Yep.
And many of the birds did not survive. Illness and weight loss were serious problems. And so, the poor looking birds did not get purchased at the markets they were going to. Dress poultry, as most of us are familiar with today, was shipped in early refrigerator cars, but the birds were unappealing. They tended to look frozen and iced over and not very appetizing. So that close to the ice bunkers arrived in good shape, but like meat at the center and the warmest part of the car, those often spoiled and were unfit for consumption. In 1884, William Jenkins and James Streeter came up with a design for a live poultry car, quickly patented it. And it was a single open compartment stock car with wire mesh sides. And then it was built into multi-levels with where individual coops were set. And each coop was fitted with a feed and water trough so that you could transport the live birds. So let's look at a quick promo film. Glenn? Unfortunately, you're not getting the sound. But there they are inspecting, look at the birds, taking from the crates and putting into the coops. You saw the farmer bringing in his crates of birds, and there they are in a poultry car. You can see the wire mesh. You can see the different levels and decks. He's throwing feed up to them just while they're sitting there on the siding being loaded. You notice the board sticking out. That is be the base of each coop, and they were to clean them. They would just use a little push squeegee. There he is putting feed in the trough. This is the interior of the car, and here we are bringing birds out of the car and putting them in the large crates for delivery to their destination.
Those birds look so small compared to birds now.
But they have the same facial expressions.
Yes, they do.
Somebody has good eyes.
Yeah, so. And there they go, off to market. The biggest markets for fresh birds were the Jewish populations in New York City, Boston, Philadelphia, etc. on the East Coast. Had something to do with the kosher laws. So we don't want to see that one again. Let's move on. Okay. So we had here is the Jenkins Streeter poultry car. You can see it looks like a stock car, just with wired sides instead of slatted sides. But it was, it was designed to just either stack crates in there. But then the farmers didn't get their crates back, which they weren't happy about. There was no setup to care for the birds in transit to make sure that they were healthy and fat. And loading, unloading was done from the outside of the car, which of course opened up to a lot of lost birds getting away, etc. And the small size of the car limited the number of poultry that could be transported. So they quickly redesigned this. They had another patent in 1885, 1888, again in 1891. And that's the information I was just sharing with you on that slide. So let's move on to, here's another patent design that came from them. This is the 1884 car. You can see now they're putting in basically a shelf with different coops or crates that could be loaded in there. So, and is in this revised plan, broken into numerous different compartments. You had feed and water troughs here so that the live birds could be fed and watered in transit. You also had various mechanisms to open and close slats for ventilation. There was a center aisle in this car so they could be accessed for loading and unloading, as you saw in that brief film. And the doors opened onto the aisle from the center stateroom. Stateroom was equipped with a sink, a stove, a bunk for the carman or the attendant so that he could travel with the birds and make sure they were fed and healthy. The ceiling held a water tank. Of the ceiling of the stateroom had a water tank, and then feed was in a large box underneath the floor of the stateroom. And notice they do call them staterooms, so your expectations will be high. And there's that text. Let's move. Here is a more later design, again showing the coops that are lined up on either. This stateroom was right here in the middle. Coops lined up on either side on both sides of a center aisle. There's a box underneath the floor with a trap door for storage of feed. And then there would be a large metal tank up above for storage of water. And what they found was that it was best to mix feed with the water to make a mesh. And that way the birds could get moisture as well as feed without sloshing the water all over. So here's a drawing from a live poultry transportation company. They were the major owner and transporters of live poultry in this country. So, and here are the end drawings. You can see that's cut away. You can see the coops stacked up on either side in the center aisleway. And here at the end, you can see there's ventilation and doors that could be slid over to create more ventilation if need be. Birds do not handle the heat very well, especially when they're crowded together in these coops or crates. So in 1890, the Continental Live Poultry Company offered a longer car, which had space for up to 7,000 birds. The cars that we were looking at drawings for they would hold about 4,000 birds. So this was a significant improvement in that regard. They even were supported by the Michigan Central, but unfortunately, Continental Live Poultry only lasted a couple years. But these are the only known drawings of that Continental Live Poultry car, in the lettered, of course, for Michigan Central. But you can see they had a rack for stacking the crates or coops up in. They had some sort of a overhead. I don't know if this is the water tank. I'm assuming it is. And then you can see they had a center door here. So go to another design. This is the American Poultry Car out of Boston. They began operations in 1909 using a pageant from a fellow by the name of Burgett, a very closed car with, as you can see, tight louvers and slats to be closed down, protect them from the harsh northern climates. We know nothing about that, right? Got to click in my, but this design failed to catch on, and the company, after just 2 years, dissolved in 1911. So very few of these cars were ever built. This is the end of that car. You can see there's a access door. It's on, slides over out of the way, plus ventilation. However, the poultry car grew in popularity. Jenkins created the Jenkins Live Poultry Car Company, reporting marks LPTC, in 1888 to correspond with his particular car design. He quickly reorganized into the Live Poultry Transportation Company By 1890, he had 56 cars in operation, 6 through the Jenkins Live Poultry and 50 through the Live Poultry Transportation Company. By 1903, they were up to 825 cars that were in private service in operation, and very little in the way of competition. As you saw, the competitors faded away pretty quickly. They had a dozen different patents for all kinds of designs, improvements, etc., related to the live poultry transportation. It seems like everybody was wanting to ship chickens, so it was happening. What's unique about these cars, each car had an individual name. It could be named for a place, maybe for a type of bird, maybe for an individual who had made some impact on the country. So you have cars named like San Francisco or Magpie or Mud. And almost every fast freight headed into large metropolitan areas had poultry cars in the consist. In 1910, they adopted a steel underframe and other updated safety features. The wood frame cars were remodeled or retired. And we saw the same thing happening with cabooses and passenger cars. The wood framed cars just did not survive. So in 1909, another company tried to get into the game, Lemac Carrier Company. They came up with 150 live poultry cars. By 1917, they had 400 cars, but they were sued for patent infringement by the live poultry transportation, even though their advertising said this was a new patent design for the cars. And this company vanished sometime in the early 20s. There were a few railroads that purchased their own poultry cars starting late 1800s, early 1900s, where we have evidence of Michigan, Central Lehigh Valley, the Southern, the Lackawanna, Norfolk, Western, and a few more owning their own poultry cars. And notice these were in locations where it was convenient for raising a lot of chickens and also close to the major markets for live birds, which again, I mentioned was the Jewish communities on the East Coast. Here is a photo of the Lehigh Valley poultry car. It looks like a stock car that's been lined with chicken wire. So I'm not sure if they just stacked crates in there, but I would assume that's what they did. Here's a drawing for the Southern Railway poultry car. And notice it's similar to the ones we've been seeing some photos of, a central compartment, crates or coops stacked up on either side, a center aisle through it. So, and I'd be happy to share any of these drawings with anyone who thinks they want to build one. This is Canadian Pacific's version of a live poultry car. You can see the wire mesh sides, ventilation at the end for the central aisleway, the attendance compartment, box down here for feed, a water tank up above. So this is a car for the Pacific Wholesale Poultry Company out of Petaluma, California. Petaluma is roughly 50 miles north of San Francisco, and they were a large ag area, and they became the largest producer of chickens and poultry in California, and basically were feeding the San Francisco and perhaps the Sacramento markets. Again, there were large Jewish populations, but also just chickens in general. Now, some features noticeable in this car, notice the ladders, not just on the ends, but also ladders on each side of the compartment. And I'll show you why those are there a little bit later. And then notice the roof walk or running board here is raised because you've got a ventilation up here. There were a hinged door where you could open this up and let more airflow through the car. So, and then we got a second, probably Pacific Wholesale Poultry next to this car. Let's see, more text. 1914 live poultry reorganized again. They had over 1,000 cars in operation by that point, with more on the order from the Terre Haute Car and Manufacturing Company. By 1921, fleet had swelled to 2,000 cars. In September 1922, National Poultry Butter and Egg Bulletin was reporting severe shortage of live poultry cars. And that was a real concern. So the live poultry transportation company was still struggling to keep up with demand. Railroads, consumers, dealers, markets were unhappy with their performance. The ICC, Department of Ag, American Railway Association. I mean, just everybody had to get involved, so let's see what this movie. Many poultry dealers ship their poultry live. There's a standard live poultry car. These are films that were done in the late 20s by the USDA. Here you can see some birds in their coop. Yeah, 4,000 to 5,000 head carried in each car. Here we are taking them out of a coop and loading them into, well, and that ends that film. So let's get over, click a button. Finally, in the late 20s, there was some competition came in that actually gave them competition. There were 2,800 live poultry cars in operation at that time. Bulk of them were privately owned by the Live Poultry Transit Company. And then in 24, another company called the Palace Poultry Car Company, reporting marks PPKX, came into being. In 25, they had 251 cars in operation, quickly up to 400. And then in 26, North American Car Corporation took over the Palace Poultry Car Company. And North American was large enough, had enough power and money to overwhelm the smaller Live Poultry Transit Company, and ultimately took control of them January 1st of 1930. So you can start to see a pattern here. Here's a Palace Poultry Car design. This is the Meyerfeld. Some patent designs and differences, but looks very similar. A good clear view of those hinged ventilators up here on top. Notice there's no ventilation over the attendant's compartment because of the water tank. But you do have the vent for his stove. Ladders on either side here, and a nice steel frame, nice clean looking car. So let's see, 28, over 50% of the live poultry moved by rail, but by 1940 it dropped to only 27% because of truck traffic improvements made in highways and more ability to ship dressed poultry in refrigerator cars. And by the World War II, the average non-Jewish housewife was perfectly content with buying a dressed bird at the meat market versus a live bird. And so what's interesting was the comment that with the crash of 1925, 929 and farming industry in ruins, that people still needed to eat. So companies like North American, Fruit Growers Express, Merchants Dispatch, and I'm sure PFE continued to make money and show prosperity as they were moving food across the country. And so there were, oh, excuse me, lost my track here. Quit playing with the mouse. Shift to dressed poultry became very evident as tons of fowl were shipped by the early 40s as dressed poultry, a ratio of 10 to 1 over live poultry. The war helped increase live poultry shipments for a short time. However, the heyday of live poultry shipments were drawing to a close. So if you're, let's see, I missed something here. What did I miss? Let's go back I see some reporting marks there that, how do we get, excuse me, I got to get back to where I was supposed to be. Here we go. Not paying attention at all, am I? Let's see, dual refrigerator poultry cars were developed for less than carload poultry shipment. These cars were half live birds, half refrigerator. They could carry 2,500 birds, and then they had space for poultry, eggs, butter, and other perishables. And here's a photo of one such car, 1928. Notice the name is Sample, so I have a feeling that this may have, but we got the Walkers and Son Produce Company out of Smith Center, Kansas. This photo came from a Rock Island Employees magazine as they were promoting this new service on this branch line in Kansas. So you still have an attendant there to look after the live birds. The attendants also collected the eggs. Part of their pay was that they got to sell the eggs when they arrived at their final destination. So the attendants were very good about collecting the eggs. So let's see, now let's move on to this next slide. 32 is conversion of existing live into the dual purpose, allowed for the railroads to make adjustments. And then these cars were given the HLSX reporting marks. In 1940, North American retired 1,000 cars from their fleet as live poultry shipping continued to decline. And this is where we get this shift to dressed poultry, the ratio of 10-1, comments about the war. So, and then we have, this is humane livestock car. Notice that there was a concern about how animals and birds were getting treated. So we had the humane livestock car created. This is car number 1. Notice that all the cages are set in the center of the car. The attendant's workroom is here at the end of the car. But and Bachmann has made a model of this car at some point in the past. This is their number 2. So you can see this company did not survive very long. We got standard double-deck stock car doors on the side here. But, and again, it looks like a center aisle, and we've got cages or coops, but there's no longer an attendance room here. So it's an interesting development. Again, they only had the 2 cars, one of each design. So 1944, North American created what's called the Poultry Transit Company so that they could offload all their failing live poultry business, transferred all the remaining cars of 124 to the Poultry Transit Company. And many of those cars were retired. By 47, they were down to a mere 237 cars out of a maximum total of about 2,800 cars. So we're looking at less than 10% of the cars in existence in 47. By 1950, that was down to 15 cars. There's some dispute as to when the actual live poultry shipments ended. The American Poultry Historical Society states it ended in 1956. However, the railroads list a very small poultry shipments as late as 1961. So if you're modeling after 1950, you can choose which date you want. I modeled 1949, so that's less of a concern for me. So here's the National Poultry Car, number 6,000, the BAR, B-A-R-R. Doesn't look too much different from the other cars that we've been seeing. This was built in 1933. Now we'll just look at a variety of poultry cars. Here's one being loaded for shipment in Whitehall, Wisconsin, probably going to markets in Milwaukee and Chicago. You can see it's stuffed full of birds. Here is the live poultry transportation number 507. This is a Chanticleer. You could almost make the name out above the door. This was typically where the name of the car would be printed up here, and then the reporting mark and numbers would be down here, reporting marks on the end of the car. So I see, that car says something about Chicago, Illinois on it. So it's in general service to Chicago, apparently.
It's a Lincoln Pin car too.
Was it a Lincoln Pin? Oh, let's go back here. Oh, it is. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. And look at those trucks. Solid wheel. Yeah. So this is an early one. Thank you for pointing that out, Bob. Yep, here's one loaded with live pigeons. It wasn't just chickens that were shipped, pigeons, turkeys, etc. All live fowl, but they found that chickens seemed to have handled it the best. The turkeys tended to get stressed out and they had too many losses, and they found that turkeys were people accepted the dressed turkey or the frozen turkey without too much trouble in the markets. So here's a sample of a large Midwestern city freight house, and look at all the chicken coops stacked up there, waiting to be either returned to farmers or loaded with birds coming in off a bunch of poultry cars. Here we can see the transfer. The farmers brought in his chicken crates, being handed to the attendant who will pull the birds out of that crate, stick them in one of the coops on the poultry car, and the crate will get returned to the farmer then and there. The farmer will also, usually they've got someone there who's buying the birds right on the spot, and we will also receive a check or payment for his birds at the time that they're transferred to the car. So this is a shot of a crate of turkeys. I mentioned that live turkeys were shipped. They found they had greater losses with live turkeys than they did with live chickens. And for some reason, the American housewife was more readily accepting of a dressed or frozen turkey. I'm not sure where the kosher laws and Jewish population stood on that. Maybe it was because they didn't celebrate Christmas and Thanksgiving where turkey was the traditional meal. I just don't know. So, but that could be part of it. So here we got a bunch of folks waiting for the train to arrive. You got some crates of chickens there. So obviously a poultry car arriving. So, and here we got, this is Lumberton, North Carolina. You got a string of poultry cars there, and you can see everybody's driving in with their crates of chickens, ready to sell them and load them up. This one is, I'm not sure where this photo was taken, but you can see somebody's come in. He's got a couple of crates there on his buckboard. And you see the attendants holding the birds by their legs, getting ready to take them inside and stuff them in the coop. And notice that they're not all white chickens. There's a variety of colored chickens of various colors in those coops as well.
Looks like the word Pacific Coast might be on the structure behind the car itself.
Ah, yes, I see that now that you point that out. So this could be out in the West Coast somewhere. I can't quite make out the lettering on the crate here. So
That looks like a sailing ship on the left.
oh,
Yep, 2 masts.
yep. So this might be in San Francisco. So I know my hometown, the city council, been dealing with the question of whether to allow people to raise chickens in town or not. So it could be this fellow here with the wagon is someone in the San Francisco area, just bringing his chickens right to the dock instead of loading them somewhere else. So here's a shot from probably again in South Carolina or down south somewhere. Got a farmers with their wagons of mules and the chicken crates loading up the poultry car. Here's another farmer with a truck, something Farm Federation. But again, the crates of chickens and the attendant here in the door. The Columbia is the name of the car here. Oh, this is yet another loading of birds. Farmers bringing in Norfolk and Western boxcar there. And here we got a young fellow helping in the process. He's got a couple birds in each hand as the fellow in front of him, taking him into the car. Now, how would you like to be living like a week in this room where every time you stop, someone's bringing a bunch of live chickens through your bedroom? Talk about a feather bed, right?
I'm sure it didn't smell well.
Yeah, that's why all the
Ugh.
ventilation. So
Yeah. Sheesh.
yep, and here you
Chicken
can
poop.
see. Oh yeah, if anyone's ever been around chickens or cleaned them, you know.
Yeah. If you've been around the chicken coop, chicken
Yeah, oh
farm.
yeah,
Ooh-wee.
that's the chow car.
Crow.
What?
It said crow.
Crow. Oh, I'm sorry. Yep. I just had eye surgery, so I'm not real focused here. So, this is who gets the poultry? Well, this is going to Berkner Brothers, according to the photograph. So we got some fly protection on those horses. Of course, when you get chickens, you got flies. And the guys are all wearing coats, so this might be in a little bit cooler part of the year. Also got some sacks of feed there on that wagon, so they're probably filling the feed bunk underneath. This is says the first poultry shipment by the county in 1924. I believe this photo was also down in North Carolina somewhere. And this is also from that same shipment or location. People are quite happy they're able to get some money for the birds they've been raising. There's the Yonkin. Hastings, Nebraska, I believe, was marked on this car. So yeah, birds were raised all over the country, and they traveled, some of these birds traveled up to a week or so in going to market, which was another reason they had to be fed and watered and cared for. Here we are, this is Enid, Oklahoma, being shipped to New York City via the Frisco in 1913, a string of cars. Here's another photo of a string of cars. They look just nice and clean and appetizing, don't they?
Except for that pile of the cars that have been cleaned.
Well, this looks like it could be a dusting of snow, but I noticed that's not a chicken right there.
It's a goose.
That looks like a goose, yeah.
Mhm.
So. Yep, and this is also Nebraska, a live poultry butter and egg special. So they had some poultry cars as well as you can see they got a refrigerator car there as well. A couple refrigerator cars. So yeah, the farmers would bring in their eggs, butter, cream. Often you had a company in town. It might be a creamery or a poultry buy. They might dress chickens, but they would buy the live poultry. They buy the eggs, the butter and cream. And they ship it on into the major cities where it would be processed for consumption. So let's talk about these guys, the attendants. Whoever was assembling the train, the people who were using the poultry cars, they would hire a carman to ride with the shipment who would help load and fill the cages during the first few days of the trip. The entire trip, they would feed, water the birds, make sure they keep the birds alive and hopefully gaining weight. That was the primary duty. In fact, there might have been a bonus in the paycheck if they were had put on weight. He also was to check for any birds that were in poor health or dead. They were moved quickly to prevent any disease spread. After the car was unloaded and cleaned, the carman left the stateroom and the car was returned empty. Sometimes that carman would get a ticket back to his home as part of his duties. Other times he was just left wherever the car was unloaded and he was on his own for getting back home. So it varied. So now here's a couple of photos of the attendance room. Here on the left, you can see the little stove he had there. Extra set of overall, must be the Sunday best hanging on the door. Some sacks of feed. And here you can see another interior shot, a little bit of a couple guys standing there. It was basically where the feed sacks are. There would be a bunk or a cot. The stove is what he prepared his meals on. And he usually had some sort of a barrel or large pot in which he would mix the mash of feed and water for the birds. So these are some rules they had to have in 1922, you had to have one carman per 5 cars. If they were all for the same owner, if one person was shipping 5 carloads of birds, he could get away with 1 carman. 2 carmen in charge of 3 or more for 11 or more cars. No women or children were allowed to get this job. Return passage reimbursement, if it was made available, had to be completed within 60 days. So no lollygagging around in the big city. You had to get back home. Most of them did not get the luxury return fare. Western roads were more likely to do that by a seat in a day coach or a coach seat to points west of Chicago. When the live poultry is shipped with no carman, the contract would be noted with no caretaker in charge. And my guess would be that would be for shorter shipments, like less than 24 hours or something. So And some roads used old passenger cars to act as caretaker cars. And they were used to give the carmen a break from the noise and smell. Similar to what we'd find with moving larger livestock of cattle or hogs or whatever. Railroads often provide what they call a drover's caboose or an old passenger car for the wranglers and cowboys that traveled with the cattle. So here is a drawing of a poultry caretaker's car. This is, let's see, something St. Louis and Western. I can't remember which railroad that was. But you can see it's basically a bunch of bunks with a small table and a stove. And they, the car attendants, every time they stopped, they probably traded places. If you were in charge of 4 or 5 cars, you'd swap places with someone so he could sleep and rest while you watched after all the cars. So luxury travel. Here we are, we're loading at Gentry, Arkansas by J.R. Beaver Company. Loading up a bunch of chickens there. Okay, another USDA. This is inspection requires a permit before the car attendant would get the permit to unload. You got to inspect the cars. This is USDA guy. He's looking at the birds, checking the croup, seeing how healthy they are. Throws them, just handles them so easily. Yep, that one's healthy. Throw him back in. So if they're overloaded with food, then they have to wait for a day. Those who know chickens know crops. So, yep, he's feeling the underneath belly to. Yep, that one's good. And then this is what they did with birds that did not meet their inspection. You wring their neck, throw them on the floor, and then when you get a chance, you throw them outside the car. And then the inspector fills out the paper, the permit, gives it to the attendant. Notice the attendant is only one arm. So
He can't ring the birds.
yeah. But he can throw them out of the car. He can pull them out
He
and
can
just throw them
throw 'em
out the
out.
door while they're moving along. So,
Probably a
suspect-
World War I vet.
so
Hey, that almost looks like a coverall and that was the one, remember where you showed those clothes hanging?
oh
in that
yes.
opening? That might maybe some of them wear like a coverall, like our mechanics do.
You're probably right to try to stay as clean as they could.
Cause that looked exactly the same as that one hanging before.
You're right. Yeah. Yep. Good point. So here's just some more of the poultry cars.
Go back one, Doug. That's the best poultry car name ever. One more from that. Go
Buck.
back.
Cluck. Yep.
Okay. There.
Oh yeah. I do have a spreadsheet with about 100 to 150 cars, their names and numbers that we've been able to identify via photographs. Because there's never been any record kept of any of these cars except just the numbers and the ORER. So it's been and not always are the photos good enough to actually read.
Chantilly.
Yeah, that was the Chantilly again. Got that in there twice. This is the Govert and Vogel, North Vernon, Indiana. So this is a company name up here and their general office in Chicago. So that tells us a little bit about this car and how it was used. This is the geezer. None of us reflect that. So this is Henderson's Produce Company. You can see they're buying poultry, eggs, and butter. They got crates of poultry stacked up on their loading dock there, ready to be loaded into the cars.
I believe the name of that car was Chanticleer, which means rooster.
Yep. Chanticleer.
Uh-huh. It's good to have educated people in the
I
crowd.
just saw it earlier on one of the slides. It did say Chanticleer.
Yep. Well, I've actually seen it spelled two different ways, which is why my pronunciation's not always correct. So. This is nice shot of the long 1566. And we got another load of birds. Harris. This one's being shipped from the Abingdon Produce Company in April 21. I don't know if that means Abingdon, Illinois or Abingdon somewhere else, but now this is an interesting photo because here we have a Swift and Company poultry building, and we have a live poultry car there along their dock. Swift had a variety of not just their slaughterhouses, but they also dealt a lot with poultry. They had duck farms, they had hatcheries, they had places where they were set up to buy the produce of the eggs and butter and cream, etc., as well as birds. So so that's another excuse to run your poultry car. So here's the Clay. That's the Keller. That's a Palace live poultry car, slightly different design. There's the Ramsey. That's also a Palace poultry car. Here's what the ends of the two different ends to break into another end of the 1023. Another end. Here is one that's getting rebuilt, so you can see the metal framing that's involved with the later designs for the Palace poultry car. And now let's move on to the very last known live poultry car that's still in existence. Is Poultry Transit Company's number 423, which was parked on a siding at the J.H. Brown Poultry Company in Illinois about 1950. And it still carried its Palace poultry car designation, a number of 5568. It was no longer being run as a car, but simply used as a hen house and chicken storage for the Brown Poultry Company. In 57, the National Museum of Transportation spotted the car, tried to talk the company into parting with it, but they wanted to keep their chicken coop, and so they kept the car. And was 28 years later the National Museum of Transportation finally got the car after the J.H. Brown Company ended and the new owner donated it. I imagine the new owner was happy to get rid of it. So, but this car still exists. It is sitting under a roof down in St. Louis. It's in pretty poor shape. These photos were taken a few years ago by someone who got permission to go in there and actually take some pictures of it. So, and there you can get a close-up of the cage, and then the slats. And these openings were so they could, as they were cleaning the waste out of the cars, they could just shove it outside the car and off onto the roadbed or wherever. The steel uprights and framing. So, and here's the attendance room, and then this is the jumbled mess of the aisle inside. You can see the coops, the cages are slowly deteriorating. The feed troughs have slid out and falling on the floor. So it's sad to see a car. Sad to see one in this condition, but I also know that every museum relies on donations and dollars and volunteers to preserve cars. So at least they've got it inside with hopes of preserving it someday.
Well, they had, I don't know, Doug, if I think you're probably aware, they had a big campaign some years back where they had the car out. I've been down there, same thing, but the car was buried among others, but they had it out at one time. They ran a big campaign, the National Historical, trying to raise funds to restore it. And it was a very dismal collection.
Response. Yeah.
Yep. And so it's been ever since in the condition. That photo on the right is what I saw a lot of, but it was buried in the middle somewhere.
Yeah.
And he wanted to know what the hell, why I wanted to go see it.
That was kind of the response I got when I was down there and asked about it. They said it's not it's just not accessible. It's buried back in a barn. We don't let people back there. And I was
I
not
got
aware there
back-
had,
I did get back there. He took me
Well,
back.
good for
Reluctant.
you. Yeah, so. Well, here's another shot of a poultry car. You can see someone up on top checking the water level in the water tank. There's another one packed at a freight house dock. And we got another film.
Poultry racketeers.
Let's start that again. I'm It seems the mob was getting involved with controlling the poultry market. So the government got involved with trying to break that up. So that's what that was about. But New York City was a major market. They got 250 cars a week with upwards of 5,000 birds in each car. So that tells you how much the Jewish kosher market was in that area. You can see the cars lined up here. You see the upper ventilation doors have been opened up and the end doors have been opened to get as much air flowing through for these birds, while the buyers are coming through to purchase. It seemed the kosher laws were such that a Jewish housewife insisted on buying a live bird that she would kill and dress herself for the family dinner. So the markets in places like New York City, Philadelphia, etc., were where the live birds were often destined. So.
They dug the math on that is 12.5 million birds a week.
Yeah, a lot of birds, a lot of birds.
A lot of fish guts.
Mm-hmm.
Ugh.
There he is using his knife. And that's, yeah. I know meatpacking plants out here in Iowa had rabbis on the kill line for producing kosher beef for the same reasons. So.
You're kidding me.
Very specific dietary rules. Yeah. So.
Almost look like shaving razors.
I think
Yeah, they were specially blessed and all that good stuff. Yep.
straight razor.
Yeah.
Yep.
There we go. Live and dressed poultry, fresh and frozen eggs, yeah, all kinds of good stuff there. So moving on, here's why those latter, oh no, sorry.
Killed and picked free.
Here is why the two ladders are there, is that so they could hang canvas on each side. They climb up the ladders and hang canvas in bad weather to protect the birds. So that was something else that might be stored in the attendant's car. So here's another film at the New York market showing how they did that. And you said 12 million birds a week, did you, Brian?
Somebody else gave that
Oh,
calculation.
yeah. Well, considering that, there's more than 12 million people living there, that's about one chicken a week.
Well, not back in those days. It was
Oh, no.
12 million. You
Oh,
probably, you might have had 3 million. So 4 chickens a week.
yeah, okay. Yep, so. Well, and here's a load of turkeys in Little Current, Canada, but you can see where both sides of the car have been covered with the tarps or canvas to protect the birds. Here's a shot inside. You can see a nice clean car here, and then you see the attendant here taking care of his birds. Now, it looks like he had to be kind of a monkey himself to do it. And then here's some more photos of the various
There's the
attendants.
cover.
Yeah. Now, of course, how did people know these poultry cars were coming? The companies would advertise. Poultry car will be in Gary on these 2 days. So bring your birds, we'll pay the highest price. And so there'd be advertisements placed in the local newspapers, and I'm sure places like the feed mills and general stores and such, announcing when the cars would arrive. And here you can
Notice-
see.
Notice the prices for old roosters.
Yeah. Yeah, they tended to be tough old birds. People wanted that young tender stuff. So this is from 1921. Here's some more ads. The poultry car Thursday, April 21st at Lincolnton Freight Depot. Here's a car of poultry ready to be belonging to the Table Rock Poultry Company. Was struck on the end by a switch trap and badly wrecked on Saturday night. Many of the fowl were killed and others got away and had to be run down. So can you imagine doing that? This is North Carolina, the Lincolnton Times. So, and then of course you also had the railroads in the business of promoting chickens. Here's the Union Pacific promoting people to move to the Pacific Northwest with only $1,000. You too can become rich raising chickens, and we will be happy to ship them for you at our prices. No, it doesn't say that, does it? But this is an ad that they placed enticing people to move out west and lands at, of course, they're talking Oregon, Washington. My guess is they're talking the eastern parts of those 2 states where it's fairly arid and not really comfortable to live, but that's a different matter. So
If you're into old movies, there's a Fred McMurray movie called The Egg and I, where he's talked into starting become a chicken and egg farmer.
yes, I saw that a couple of years ago. It's a delightful old movie. It gives you a real feel for what they struggled with trying to raise chickens and eggs. So, yeah, here's another photo. This is on the Monroe branch, wherever that's located at. I don't know. So let's move on. And we have some other transportation means for moving. This is a truck car coming in. We have the poultry Pullman here. And here we got just an open-sided stacked to the rafters with chicken crates. So here is how a local farmer might be bringing them into town. Just a crate stacked up and hanging over the sides of the truck. And of course here we got the driver is having to check out a problem on his truck. But well, let's see. Let's move on. Live poultry models. They are a very unique car, even though several manufacturers tried to produce scale models. Ambroid Northeast scale models produced the Live Say poultry car and the Speedy poultry half poultry, half reefer car in wood. And you can still find these car kits on eBay. Neither is 100% prototypical, but at the time they were the closest you could get. Mainline models, another 50s era company made a wood kit for a live poultry car, but it also very few details, typical of the cars from the 50s, less detailed than even the Ambroid kit. Model Railroader published a couple articles with drawings. And you see the dates there. This is the Ambroid kit for the Speedy car. This one's not been painted. Looks like they're using some sort of a fabric material to replicate the chain link type fencing. You get the 2 ladders, you get a standard wood refrigerator car on this half. And trying to copy that raised running board with the ventilation doors. So
Probably bridal veil.
yeah, Bridal Veil, thank you. Yeah. Overland Brass came out with a Palace Poultry car model that really works well for the 20s to the 50s. Beautiful car if you can find one. That was done in the 1980s. Bachmann Tyco released a tri-level stock car modeled after that Humane stock car photo I showed you. And then Bachmann has just come out. They came out about a year or so ago with, they call it a poultry car, but all it is their steel box car where they've just changed the sides. Lionel also made a couple of poultry cars. The poultry dispatch car had chicken silhouettes and realistic sounds. And the other poultry dispatch car that windows that light up from behind. So here is the Overland Brass model. Figure 450 or so on eBay if you can find one. They're a fairly decent model, not 100% accurate, but I'd say 90% accurate. The edge sides aren't, the spacing doesn't look quite right to me, but yeah, if you want to run a string of these, you're going to be spending a few dollars, but it's a beautiful car. This is Bachmann's Humane car that you'll still find this at swap meets and stuff once in a while. And this is the Lionel car with the silhouettes. This is Bachmann's new version of a poultry car. As you can see, all they did was just took their steel box car and changed the side to a wire mesh. But notice there's no gaps between the wire mesh for those boards to stick out and for cleaning. This has got a steel end. I don't know of a single poultry car that had steel end. They all had wood ends in my viewing, and they also had the center door for the aisle. And so
Rates are much too big too,
yeah.
the floors.
And they wanted $50 for this thing, ready to run.
Poorly done.
Yeah. So I don't know how many they sold, but I didn't. Here's the Ambroid. Here's the half and half car that Ambroid did. And notice this is named Speedy. Did you notice the name on this Bachmann car? Same different number, but the same name. So I don't know who was advising Bachmann, but they should be fired. So
Speedy was really this car.
yes, this was an actual name for this car and this number, the 4002. And it was half refrigerator and half poultry, live poultry. So
And notice the number of rows for the coops.
yeah, these most of these comments are coming from Christian as she was trying to devise a way to build a model of how to model the coops with the floors that were tongue and groove, removal for cleaning, adjusting to, you could even adjust them for larger cars, larger birds like turkeys. The aisleways are 24 to 30 inches wide. The interior of their stateroom was not very plush, but it was there. And of course the feed storage and water storage and stuff. So
Okay, guys, I found a from Train Sets Only. I found the Bachmann poultry stock car with chickens ready to run. It's a Palace Live Poultry Company, PPKX, boxcar red, white door, and it has the Cluck. It says Cluck slogan, but that's actually, as we know, the Cluck car name.
Yes.
On it, and they're offering it for $25.97.
It's not worth it.
Which is marked down from But they say the MSRP is $52.
Yes.
Well, that's the lowest price one I've seen here, just Googling it, and looking at a lot of different vendors, including eBay. That's the least expensive one I've seen.
It's not
Okay,
worth
well-
the price at all, though.
So
There's,
Okay.
that would be this car here, Jim.
yep,
Yeah, but in red, like this one,
Yeah.
yeah, this
They
yellow
they
one, but in
sold,
red.
they sold it in like 5 different colors with 5 different names and numbers.
yep.
Yeah.
So anyway, well, moving on.
Hey,
Details.
fun.
Here is I came across this as a 3D printed car of the Livesay. It was kind of crude looking. You know, the guy needed to get a better 3D printer, but he was attempting. You can see he's got the supports inside for the coupes and et cetera. And there's his website access. Here is a nicely done, I believe this is O scale by a Lee Turner model. And now I'd mentioned the roof walk and the ventilation. Chickens can get hot, they generate a lot of heat, prone to panic and smothering. And so that's why they open mesh sides and the center roof hatches, etc. There's some details, but I'll just show you a couple of photos of, you can see the details here. The roof walk supports had to be solid because you had Carmen, walking across there, but they had these hinged doors or covers that would close up this or open it up for ventilation. So that was now here is a photo taken in Scranton, Pennsylvania, I believe, showing a string of livestock or poultry cars, and you can see they've got the ventilators opened, and there's slats there, so so whoever was walking here wouldn't just off step and go right through the roof, but it was protective. And then you can see there's the bunkers for the water tank on these cars. So here's another end shot. So even more details related to the thin canvas muslin could be stretched over. You could not even build all the embroidered car completely, just stretch the canvas over and tell them you're moving chickens in the winter. So
On a green layout in the spring.
yeah. But Kristen had done some measurements and found that the wire on that car in St. Louis is an 1/8 inch diameter solid wires woven in a pattern that's 1.5 inches by 1.5 inches, a diamond. And of course the C channels, the length of the screens were 14.6, and then they were 11 inches tall with a 3-inch gap between them. That's why so many of the model cars just don't look right to me. Well, here's the one by Lee Turner. He took the Overland brass car in O scale, painted it and weathered it. Did a nice job.
Fuck.
Of course, the question is, what color were these cars? I've showed you all black and white photos because the only color photo we have is this Topps bubblegum card from the 50s. And it shows we know that the long car probably was a boxcar red with details, but we've also seen white, and there's also been reports that some of them these were yellow, and so it's hard to say. But that's what I've got. So thank you much. You learned more than you ever expected. Oh, I didn't.
Very nice, Doug. I had this confused. For some reason, I had confused with your elevator presentation from a couple weeks ago, but this was great. Thank you very much.
Well, the email I got asked about poultry cars, so that's what I.
Yeah, no, that was fine.
I saw
That's what we talked
that. It
about.
said poultry cars.
That's
My
what we
email
talked
said
about.
poultry cars.
Yeah, no,
my
that was
email
right.
said-
It was me being confused, which happens more and more these days. So
Well, if you grow a little hair on top, you won't get so confused.
maybe, I don't know.
Hey, watch out there.
I haven't had hair up there in a long time, but I just started getting confused in the last few years, so.
Well, I would be happy to do the, what did I, oh, grain elevators one.
Grain
Yeah,
elevators, yeah, which, you know, you had done that one before, but I think you had a lot more,
the
set
one
up.
you saw in Collinsville was different from the one you recorded a year
Yeah.
or two
Yeah,
ago.
exactly, so. We'll have to
Is
get
that the new one you're,
Yeah,
are you doing the elevator?
that's a pretty girl.
I'm going to be doing the elevator one again at
Okay.
Naperville.
Okay.
But I gave it to St. Louis, Collinsville, but I saw some things that need to be refined and updated. So I'll be doing some more work on it in the next month or two. So I was approached by someone in the group who asked for copies of the Tillotson construction photos because he'd been working on a book on concrete grain elevators and the Tillotson company. So I shared those photos with him a week or so ago. He's very pleased with that. So
Excellent. Well, we have Ron lined up next week, who's going to be talking about the handling LP, right, Ron? And then and Ken may jump in for a little while too. He's got a brief presentation on modifying a drill for use with modeling. So we will we'll be ready to go again next week. I believe that's the 8th. And outside of that, if there's nothing else, then we'll adjourn for the night. Thanks, everybody. Have a great Thursday.
Okay,
Mayor.
bye-bye.
yep.
Bye.
Hey, Les,